My hair looks great.
You have very good hair. That's why.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
He's got a mane, and you've got.
I make him insecure.
Exactly.
Well, my beard is bigger than your beard.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
All rise. Quiet, please.
Amanda,
Hey,
so good to have you on Off the Floor.
thank you. It's good to be here. I'm excited about it.
I'm excited about it too because like there's so much things from Bronx to Brooklyn to talk about. But the first question I really want to know is who is Amanda Septimo off the floor? I mean, we all look at you as this big policymaker, as a warrior from the Bronx, one of the women in distinguished leadership here up here in the state. So who are you when you're not on the floor?
That is a good question. I think I'm honestly just like a regular person. And I think, and I'm sure you relate to this. People sort of view us as these like larger than life personalities that we get to do all these things. And we do get to do a lot of really incredible, cool things. But I'm a regular person who likes to like hang out with their family and friends. I read books. I love the beach. I love to travel. I'm someone who is really passionate about helping people in the place that I love and the place that I come from. That's the Bronx. And I love New York overall, but the Bronx first among equals.
I love that.
But I think I'm really just a girl trying her best is what I tell people, like we're all trying our best here. You know that this work can sometimes feel really thankless.
Yeah.
And it's also heavy. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it feels like we push, but there's always more to do. And so sometimes it's hard to feel like you're making progress that is actually meaningful enough. But I try to remind myself that like we're all trying our best and every bit that we push forward is worthwhile. So I'm a girl from the Bronx trying her best, I think, is what I call it.
I love that.
Thanks.
And speaking of Bronx, obviously you and I have this rare thing that happens in politics where you have an opportunity to actually represent a neighborhood you're from. A lot of our colleagues sometimes have moved.
Yeah.
And no shade to the colleagues.
I got a little bit of shade
get
for
it,
people
but
like that.
some folks have moved in the areas. What was it like being in the Bronx growing up as young Amanda?
I was born in 91. So I grew up in Hunts Point.
Yep.
And I grew up in Hunts Point of the 90s, right? And so it was rougher then than it is now. We've made a lot of progress, which I'm really
They got like a piano district now in the Bronx or something like that?
No, we don't call it that. We don't call it that. We do not call it that. But it's called that. They tried to call it that because we have a historic district where a lot of those like pianos were made.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And that's where it was trying to like harken back to the history, but it was for the wrong reasons. So
Yep.
none of us bought into it. My mom had me when she was 19. She was up here at SUNY Albany, still in school. And so I lived with my grandparents those first few years. My mom would come home as much as she could while she was finishing school. But I grew up with my grandparents who came here from DR in the 60s. That's why I speak Spanish. That's why I'm really steeped in Dominican culture. And as soon as my mom finished school and was able to get on her feet about a year or two later, that's when we moved to Hunts Point because it was and it remains kind of one of the bastions of affordability in the Bronx where she could get on her feet and afford an apartment as a social worker and, having a kid. I also went to school for the first few years at this little Catholic school in the Bronx. But then in 5th grade, I went to school in Westchester. And I was at this small, private, independent, all-girls school from 5th grade to 12th grade. And I think the tuition there now is probably up to like $60K.
Jesus.
And it was one of those experiences that super, super, super formative for me because I woke up in Hunts Point every day.
Yeah.
And I went to this other place where people lived in $1 million mansions, right? And it was two different worlds I was experiencing all the time. And that was really important for me because it really helped me appreciate like, okay, there's more to this world than the world that I experience every day.
Yeah.
And as I got older when I really started getting involved in community stuff, it really helped me appreciate that like these things don't happen by accident. This is a series of choices that people make that get you to this place where you can wake up in a place like Hunts Point, drive 45 minutes and end up in a place like Rye. I went to school in Rye.
Yeah.
It's important for me and it's something that I keep close. And I have a lot of relationships in Westchester now because of it. And it's a great place, great people. But it's a reminder that we have a lot of communities in New York that look really different from each other.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I think people wake up wanting the same things, right? Better for themselves and their kids and to have a life that's safe, that's stable, to be able to, put food on their table and build memories with their family. But who gets to do that and how they get to do that is really different depending on where you are.
Interesting. You talked about choices
Yeah.
and choices people make. When did you make the choice that you would give up a lot of yourself for public service?
Yeah, I didn't fully appreciate how much
Hmm.
you like really give,
I'm
right?
learning.
I was just having a conversation with one of our colleagues about how like I feel so bad sometimes with
Yeah.
like my friends and family because it's like they get almost like the leftovers of you, right? Like I'm out there giving my best to my work and to community, and then there's just not a lot left when I get home, right? And it's like the leftovers, not even good leftovers, right?
No, it's
Not
the
like
stuff that's
Thanksgiving
fresh for a
leftovers,
week.
right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's like the okay leftovers. No, but my first job out of college, I worked for Congressman Serrano.
Mm,
But I had interned for him when I was in high school.
yeah.
So that was a real privilege to be able to intern there. And then when I was done with college, be able to work at the office,
I
which
think that's when we first
represented,
met.
yeah, many,
Literally,
many
you were
moons
both
ago at this
staffers.
point. Yeah,
Yeah. You
exactly.
were like congressional staff. I was like
Yeah.
city council staff.
Yeah,
You were
yeah,
like
yeah.
big time. You were like,
No,
she works for Congress, girl.
silly, ridiculous. No, but it was an incredible experience. And it was my community, right? It's like, it was my home district. And that was an incredible experience. He was an incredible person to learn from. But I think that was the time where I really appreciated that, like, no matter how much you agree with your principal,
Yeah.
you are not the principal.
Yeah.
And I would say 99% of the time, he and I were on the same page.
Yeah.
That 1% of the time
Felt,
burned me.
it felt heavy though.
Yeah,
That
it
1% felt
burned
like,
me. And I would, be making my arguments and selling and pushing. And sometimes it just didn't work, right? And it's his prerogative as a member. But it's also, I think, connected to the difference in where we were in our careers,
Mm.
right? I was 23 when I got promoted to district director,
Mm.
which incredible honor.
super young.
He super young. The congressman at the time was like 70 plus.
Yeah.
And so we were just at different places in life,
Yeah.
and how we approached the world was different and how we saw the world was different. And so I had this zest and I'm here to push and I'm here to and there were times where I think through his experience he's done something different and gotten different results. And so I was like, okay, if I really want to change things around here, then that means stepping into leadership in that way at some point.
Yeah.
And how that was going to happen, I wasn't sure. When it was going to happen, I wasn't sure. I knew that I wasn't willing to wait.
Yeah.
However long people decide to wait.
Yeah.
That whole game wasn't for me. The notion of just like, oh, you wait around just didn't ever work for me. And so opportunities didn't really present themselves. I had to kind of create them.
Absolutely.
And I say that because I was about to be like, yeah, the opportunity presented itself, but I just
Yeah.
made the
You
opportunity.
kicked in the door, waved in
Right. You got
the
it.
petition papers, got on the ballot.
Exactly. Exactly. And you get it done.
I mean, it's funny because we're also living this urgent moment right now across the state and across the country where we have ICE agents
Yeah.
talk about your Dominican heritage and being
Yeah.
proud of being an immigrant and
Yeah.
your parents and grandparents being immigrants. What does this moment require from us in the state legislature at this moment, at a time when the federal government, you've worked in the federal government, we
Yeah.
work in the state government, is really not doing enough to protect
Yeah.
vulnerable New Yorkers?
Yeah. I mean, I think certainly urgency, right? Understanding that like the time to act is always now.
Yeah.
And the second best time to act is the moment right after now, right? Like
Mm.
you can't go back and change things, but you can always act in the moment. But I think it's more than just like what's happening with immigration is like a fine point,
Mm.
but it's the larger concept of like it is critical for our party in this time to demonstrate leadership,
Mm.
period.
Yeah.
And immigration is the clearest place where we have a real opportunity to distinguish ourselves as leaders that have values that say, this is where the line is, this is what we stand for, here's how we're going to demonstrate it. But I think really what's happening is that people have lost confidence in government. They've
Mm.
lost confidence in politics and believing that it's real and believing that it works. And we have to put forth policies and actually do things, right? Like you
Mm.
can't just talk about doing things. You can't just talk about other people being terrible. You have to actually do things
Okay.
that people can say, oh yeah, I went to this thing because of this thing they did.
Yeah.
I got this thing because of this thing Democrats did, right? And right now, kind of a short list, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we spend so much time up here working to make people's lives better. And I know that we create programs and we allocate funding and we do all those things that are meant to help people. But what is all that worth if people don't feel it?
Yeah. And it's interesting because some of the tension points that we feel in our democracy at this moment doesn't really come from state houses. I think state houses have kind of lifted up
Right.
the work. It's kind of been
Right.
on the backs of the federal government and
Mhm.
some of the folks in Congress who are not doing their part.
Right.
And I know that recently we almost lost you
Well, not to death, right?
Not to death, thank God.
I'm gonna knock
But
on
we
some
almost
wood.
knock on some wood right here. No, we almost lost you to
Yeah.
Congress, and which
Yeah.
would have been a joy for a lot of us in terms of seeing someone who has your fight, your grit up there in DC,
Thank
someone
you.
who's going to provide leadership.
Thank you.
What happened with the congressional race?
Yeah, so I was excited, but really I've gone through kind of the 5 stages of grief on it. So I'm excited to just continue my work on the state level. But I had jumped into the congressional. I had been unexpectedly diagnosed with lupus. Yeah, actually, I had to Google it because I was like, what does this even do to you? I don't even know enough about what lupus does. But I've learned so much about how 90% of lupus patients are women, which is like a staggering statistic to me.
Yeah.
90% of anything is like, what?
Yeah.
What's going
That's
on there?
that's a passing grade for sure. Even in the Dominican household, it's a
Right,
passing
exactly.
grade.
90% of anything is
crazy.
insane. So, and vast majority of them are women of color. And so there's just some fundamental inequities built in, right? That you can just see off rip when you look at those stats. So I'm really excited to get better, but also to use my platform and whatever power and influence that I do have to raise awareness about it, make sure that people are getting those tests and not writing off symptoms the way I was, because the sooner you catch it, the better. But also to sort of push for a cure and get us to a place where we're prioritizing this disease that is obviously inflicting women in meaningful ways, shortening people's lifespan without need, and just making progress on it.
You talk about the 5 stages. What are those 5 stages that you've gone through since?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, I was really I don't know what the actual 5
Yeah.
stages of grief are, but I think for me,
Your initial
it was
shock.
Yeah, no, and even now that shock I think is still thawing sometimes. But I think at first, look, it was a big decision to run for Congress because I had to agree to sort of step out of the assembly race, right? And so it meant this is a game of musical chairs, and if you don't have a seat at the end, you're out. And so it was making the decision to run and put it all on the line. So that took time and sort of reflection and a lot of conversations, and probably proof of the toxic kind of word culture that exists. Because when I got the diagnosis, I was still trying to think about okay, could I make this work? Could I? How can I? And my friends, my families, my doctors were just like, it's a no.
Yeah.
You really just need to take this time to prioritize getting better. And that was hard. It was sad. I have never been I joke about how I haven't made any lifelong commitment ever. I'm not married, I don't have kids, right? I've never said yes to forever with anything. And so to have that first thing be a chronic illness was tough. And so unexpected, right? I thought she was going to tell me you're eating too much bread and you're allergic, you got to slow down, right?
Yeah.
So to just come in and have a totally different thing happen was you really just kind of feel the ground shifting under your feet. And I have been saying often I just have felt exceptionally human in these last couple of months, where I think, again, I'm sure you can relate to this. Sometimes you just push through as a person, right? You push through the feelings, you push through the grief when you have a loss, you push through because you got to work.
Yeah.
And we have to get this stuff done. And there's that urgency and it's important. But this process has really reminded me of how human I am and have to allow myself to be.
And the pause that we have to take.
Correct.
It's funny, I've been going through this thing recently where it's called the 4 burners of life. And as you know, there are 4 burners on the stove.
Yeah.
And they all can't blaze at the same time.
Right.
Otherwise, something's going to burn.
Right.
And they call the 4 burners friends, family, work, and health.
Mm.
And oftentimes, we take care of the work part, right? Because we're lawmakers, we're superheroes. We want to solve everyone's issues and problems. But the things that usually get sacrificed are the friendships. You make less time. You mentioned earlier, friends.
Right.
Family, certainly. I have a 2-year-old son, I'm up here 4 days a week. It's a lot.
Right.
But the other part is health.
Yeah.
So many of us up here, whether it be mental health or physical health, just aren't taking enough care of ourselves. So I thank you for sharing that and being born with your colleagues and your constituents, because I think for a lot of us, it's that doctor's appointment we keep skipping.
Right.
you should probably go do that.
Right.
That deeper dive, you should do that.
Right. Right.
And how we're showing up, we cannot show up for other people if we're
Right.
not showing up for ourselves first. So
And we also have to like give grace to ourselves
Yeah.
the way we give grace to other people,
Yeah.
you know? And that's honestly part of why I decided to share, because I thought about not sharing. Because, you know, like career caution, you know, you never know. Like, does it make you look weak? Does it this? Doesn't
Yeah.
that? But like, you also have to give yourself grace. And I think part of giving yourself grace is also part of being a leader,
Yeah.
because it's like modeling that for others as well. Just like, hey, I know everything in the world, including my own brain,
Yeah.
wants me to prioritize my career, but I actually need to make the right decision and prioritize my health. And like, that's part of leadership too,
Yeah.
right? And like showing other people that is something that you're doing by choosing to sort of pay attention to those
Yeah.
floor burners.
You got to. Otherwise, you're going to lose
Right.
everything.
Right. Not just a congressional.
Not just congressional race.
Right.
And thankfully, you didn't lose it. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you kind
I-
of stepped away.
it's
You
away.
chose
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
chose to continue to serve in a different way.
Yes.
And I think in an honorable way.
Thank
across
you.
the state.
Which I'm excited about. I think one of the other things that, and you know this, right? Having gone through this, is like when you're preparing to serve, I think you start ideating about what the work it is that you want to do and
Yeah.
how does it look and all of those things. And so I've come back around to like, okay, well, we're here. So how are we going to make it good?
Yeah.
And that's been really exciting too, to just
Yeah.
get excited about like, all right, what's the work that we can keep driving on the state level
Yeah.
and keep having impact here. And the federal government is a little bit of a mess right now. So,
It's
you know, it's not the
probably
worst.
not
in
a
the
bad
world.
time for your mental health.
Right,
there in
exactly.
DC.
Not the worst.
Between the fundraising and the issues that the majority keeps swinging back and forth,
And the administration.
God bless
Right.
members of Congress.
Amen. Amen.
One thing I know you and I have in common is our focus on domestic violence. I
Yeah.
know that one of the first bills that I got, my first big bill,
Yeah.
was Melanie's law, really focused with a bipartisan group of lawmakers trying to figure out how do we reduce gun violence and stop the donuts and the holes in domestic violence.
Mhm.
What have you been working on in the space?
So in these last few years, I've supported the Brides March
Yeah.
consistently.
Mm.
I go to the Brides March and I fund the Brides March and a few other organizations, Dominican Women's Development Center, a few other organizations that do incredible work around domestic violence. But I am sort of like maddened by the concept that we spend more and more money on domestic violence, and yet we see this issue continue to persist.
Yeah.
It grows new heads, right? And it's like, how do we actually make impact
Yeah.
that is beyond throwing more money at a problem that isn't going away, you know? And so I right now am pushing in a big way to make sure that we start funding domestic violence work specifically with culturally specific groups in New York.
Mm.
So OVS funds a couple hundred groups,
Yeah.
and only 8 of them
Yeah.
are doing culturally specific work. They're sort of by us for us. And that's problematic, right? Like there's a massive inequity there, especially when you look at how domestic violence shows itself more in communities of color.
Yeah.
And so the fact that like Black women are like 6 times more likely to be killed by a domestic partner than other women.
Yeah.
That domestic violence is like the second leading cause of death for Latinos from ages like 15 to 29 or something crazy. Don't quote me on that exact stat, but it's crazy stats. And so it's like, well, wait a minute. Then we probably need to focus on groups that are talking to these communities specifically, right?
Absolutely.
And speaking their language, sometimes literally when you're talking about like the Korean American Family Services Center, but also the language of culture, like understanding that like there's dynamics that make it so that you can't just get up and leave in certain cultures, or what that will make it so that like if you're in an abusive situation, you don't want to just get up and leave,
Yeah.
right? And needing to be able to understand those nuances. There's already people who do that. We just need to be actively funding them. And so bringing equity to that concept of funding groups to do this work is something that I'm really passionate about,
Yeah.
and that I'm hopeful we'll be able to get done this year.
I love that.
Yeah.
When we get to June, session's over.
Yeah.
And then we go back to our districts. What's the one thing you want to make sure you get done this year before we head back? Because Albany's a weird place, right?
Yeah.
It's the kind of hurry up and wait mentality.
Yeah.
And I think things back home
Yeah.
are faster than we move in Albany.
For sure.
And we get some base hits every once in a while. We get some home runs every season.
Yeah.
What's the big thing you want to hit this season?
Yeah. I mean, aside from, I'm going to take 2. The domestic violence one is one,
Okay.
right? But I think the other major one is the food rescue tax credit, which is something that I think is going to be really important because we're seeing the changes to SNAP happening like in real time.
Yeah.
People are about to feel the squeeze on what it means if you aren't able to fill that requirement of like the work or volunteer requirements that the federal government has just put out. So the food rescue tax credit would make it so that wholesalers, restaurants, etc., could donate food to
Mm.
pantries
Mm.
and emergency food providers. Doesn't necessarily need to be a pantry, but pantries, um, and make it so that food that would otherwise get thrown out is now able to go to these pantries, and not thrown out because it's bad, not thrown out because it's rotten, anything like that, but thrown out because it just has nowhere to go. The restaurant has extra food at the end of the night. They don't have anybody to sell it to.
And they so they can let
The
it hungry across the city.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Right now, they throw it out because it's too costly for them to have to go and donate it. It just doesn't work out numerically, and we're all feeling the squeeze. So we can't expect that businesses are going to take this on, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're the nicest owner ever, it's just going to be hard for you to make it all work at the end. And so this tax credit will make it so that those businesses can directly connect with these organizations that are providing the food to people. And I think it'll go a really long way towards closing the hunger gap
Yeah.
that I worry is actually going to grow because of SNAP in this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you learned since being in Albany?
Oh, that is such a good question. The biggest lesson that I've learned is probably to be kind,
Mm.
kinder. I like to think I was kind before I got here, but I have experienced personally, but I've also seen very many examples of people just not appreciating each other's humanity in this place.
Mm.
And that's colleague to colleague sometimes,
Yeah.
that's advocate to colleague, that's elected to advocate, right? Like that's across the board. And I lost my grandmother when I was in office. Um, and she was kind of like a second mother to me. I told her I lived with my grandparents when I was young. Um, that was incredibly hard for me. And many people were kind to me during that time. And it made a very big difference in terms of being able to get through it. And I think this work, like you said, is really heavy. It can be hard, it can feel dark. But there's also a lot of joy and a lot of kindness in it if you can find it. And I think the best way to find it is to share it, you know? And so I really make an effort to talk to people, to smile, to be nice because there really are so many people here who are just trying their best,
Yeah.
right? And we're all just making our way through this life and handling what comes at you um with no real insight to how somebody else is doing that on their journey, right? And no real insight as to how hard of a day someone else is having. Um but I think this place, especially on hard days, kind of reminds me to be kind, kinder to others because you just never know what
Yeah.
people are going through, you know?
Yeah.
Weird lesson, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a great lesson. I mean, you really don't know what people are going through when they walk in here. We come with suits and smiles, and
Right.
we're pushing, as you said. And I think everyone that comes here with the best interests
Yeah.
of both
Right.
district
Right.
and the issues they care about.
Right.
But you're also overwhelmed
Correct.
with both the personal challenges you're going through
Right.
and also the challenges back home that seem enormous.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. It's like, it's the challenges you're facing, but it's also the sense of like reminding everyone that like
Yeah.
this is actually about people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fighting about millions and this and that and billions for this and but like every single one of those dollars is connected to a program that helps a person,
Yeah.
right? And I have to go back to people in my district. It's not just voters, it's not just numbers on a sheet. It is real people who can't afford to feed their kids.
Yeah.
Real people who are worried they won't have anywhere to sleep with their kids, right? And like that is, I think, something that gets lost here sometimes. But I think that, again, that notion of sort of remembering people's humanity and kindness reintroduces it and helps me get back to not only, I think, being a better advocate because I'm able to communicate the real depth of an issue that I'm pushing for, right? It's
Yeah.
not about the accolades, it's not about any of that. It's about the impact we can actually make for real people.
Mm.
But I think it also makes me a better legislator because I think I'm always open to learning and
Yeah.
understanding. Like, tell me about the thing that feels really obscure and far away,
Yeah.
but that is again connected to people in some place that I can't imagine, but that I want to hear about and learn about. And I think that's so it's kindness with the sort of goal of kind of moving the ball forward for everybody and remembering we're all people in this together.
I love that.
Thanks.
Hoping you're not leaving anytime soon. But when your career here in Albany's finished,
Yeah.
what do you want your legacy to be?
Someone asked me this question recently, actually, and I still don't know the answer.
Hmm.
I don't think a lot about legacy.
Mm.
I Probably because part of me is still probably in like the shock part of actually being here, right? That like I was a kid sort of thinking like, hey, I think I need to do that job
Yeah.
to be able to make change, and to actually be here doing it is still kind of shocking.
It's
And
funny you
so
say that because, like, I have imposter syndrome
yeah.
most days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, you look around, you get on the floor, and you look at your desk with your name on it,
Yeah.
and you're like,
That's weird.
"What's a kid from Brooklyn or the
Yeah.
Bronx doing here?" You
Right.
look around, and you have all these colleagues who are super smart,
Mhm.
apparently, and
Mhm.
articulate, and
Mhm.
know these issues, and you're kind of like, "Do I really belong here?"
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I don't think about legacy because I really am just focused on like one foot in front of the other, get it done. I think legacy is what you leave behind,
Mm,
and it will write itself.
mm,
And so I'm really focused on making sure that what I leave behind is work that is strong, that is value driven, and that people will unmistakably know was always in search of what's best for people in the Bronx and New York overall.
yeah. Speaking of the best in the Bronx,
Yeah.
what is the best food spot in the Bronx?
Oh, it really depends.
I
It
might
depends
get
on your vibe.
I might get you in
It depends.
trouble on this one.
It really depends on your vibe,
Okay.
honestly, because it's like if you want the best Italian food, you have to go to our Little Italy, which by the way is the real Little Italy, like
Oh,
over on our track,
okay. Okay.
real Little Italy. If you, so you can just go to like any Enzo's, any restaurant there, you're gonna get the best Italian food. But if you want like the best Dominican food, I would say like there's an In Valle that I love on Longwood and Southern Boulevard, not far from Hunts Point. If you want the best Puerto Rican food, I would say go to Sopro Garden, Jimmy's spot that's in my district now. If it just kind of depends. If you want the best pizza, I know a great pizza spot on the corner of Castle Hill and Bruckner. The pizza's it's like bigger than my head, the slice.
Oh,
It's
wow.
amazing.
Okay. And your head is
So
small,
yeah.
by the way, so it's not a big piece.
Well, okay,
Like,
okay. It's like a big head.
thinking in my head, that might be saying something.
Bigger than your head, bigger than your head.
I love
But yeah, it just depends. We have a lot of incredible food, honestly. Like the best, best, best of anything you can think of, we've got it.
And the best place to go on a date night, thinking for myself.
Ooh, we have a lot of really good. A lot of them are in my district too. I would say the best date night. It depends. If you want to have like fun, if it's like a date night that's gonna transition to dancing, and you guys want to like have fun and some drinks, I would say Rosa's is a
Okay.
really great place. Incredible food, incredible energy, amazing DJ. Turns into like a little vibe after. But for like a more quiet date night, I would probably go further up, maybe and on the Tremont side because I like anonymity. So maybe like Havana Room, something like that.
Think you have
We want to see you in the Bronx soon.
I'm being the Bronx. Well, I drive through the Bronx all the time.
No, but we need you to stop.
And I'm going to stop.
Yes.
Not just a Yankee game. I'm going
Not
to
just
stay
Yankee game. Not just
in the
Yankee game.
Bronx. And I appreciate this time. Thank you for making time to be off the floor with me.
Of course. Thank
Love
you. I'll see you up on the floor.
I'll see you on the floor. And I'll see you in conference.
Exactly. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
The House stands adjourned.